So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the GCSE Maths paper of November 2022 Foundation Paper 3, which is a calculator paper. Now as always, I'll include the question breakdown so you can see which topic refers to each question on this paper, and I'll also include the grade boundaries of this individual paper along with the overall grade boundaries for this series of papers. Now before we get started working through this paper, a little reminder that if you're wanting a question breakdown to see which topic relates to which question on this paper, all you need to do is check out the description. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 says, what is the clockwise turn from north to east? So if we draw a quick compass points, we've got north, east, south, west. So we're starting at north, going in a clockwise direction to east. So that's going to be looking at this angle here. And that angle is 90 degrees. So it's going to be option 2. Question 2, it says D is 6 more than C. So circle the correct equation. So if D is 6 more than C, then C will need 6 more for it to be equal to D. So what we're looking for is D equals C plus 6, which is our third option. Question 3 says here is a number line. It says which number is at A. So here we can see that we've got 1 which is split up into 4 sections, and 1 divided by 4 is a quarter. So let me just write that down. So we're going in increments of 0.25. So that's going to be 2.25. That's going to be 2.50. That's going to be 2.75. And there we've got our answer, which is the fourth option. Moving on to question 4. It says in the quadrilateral which angle is obtuse. Now obtuse is basically over 90 less than 180. So what we're looking for is, well, B is acute, C is acute, so the correct answer is going to be D, and that angle is ADC, which is our first option. Moving on to question 5a, it says write down 2 prime numbers between 25 and 35. So here if you just go through the numbers, so 25, can't use that one, 26 not prime, 27 not prime, 28 not prime, 29 is prime, so we can write that down. Then we've got 30 which isn't prime, 31 is prime, and there we've got our 2 numbers. It then says write down 1 cube number between 100 and 300. Well, if we start by having, let's say 1 cubed, which is 1, 2 cubed, which is 8, 3 cubed, which is 27, 4 cubed, which is 64, 5 cubed, which is 125. So here we can have 125. And again, I could have easily done that on the calculator rather than just reciting it. And just to double check, if I do 6 cubed, then that gives me an answer of 216. So I can either write 125 or 216, and again just to confirm, 7 cubed is 343. So the only 2 possible options I could write are 125 or 126. Remember, do not write all of them. The question specifically says write down 1, so either 125 or 216 would be correct. Moving on to question 6a, it says here are 2 straight lines. Write down the angle of W. Well, these 2 angles here are opposite, and opposite angles are the same. So W therefore is going to be 43 degrees. For question 6b, it says here are 2 different straight lines. Work out the size of angle X. Well, angles on a straight line add up to 180. So 180 minus 62 is going to equal 118 degrees, which looks correct because X is obtuse and my answer is obtuse as well. It then says in a triangle 2 angles are 51 and 74 degrees. Work out the size of the third angle. What angles in a triangle add up to 180? So if I do 180, take away 51, take away 74, and again you can type that into your calculator, and we get an answer of 55 degrees. Moving on to question 7a, it says solve 12 minus e. Well, if I take the e over to the other side, well, 12 take away what gives you 0? Well, it gives you 12, so e is going to equal 12. Then it says solve 7f equals 0. Well, 7 times what gives you 0? Well, anything times 0 is 0, so therefore f must equal 0. For question 8, it says put these probabilities in order, starting with the least likely. So in other words, what we're doing is we're putting this in ascending order. Now here we've got a mixture of fractions, decimals, percentages. So what you want to try and do is convert them so that they're all the same. So I'm going to go for decimals. So this is 0.72, 0.705, and that's going to be 0.7. So looking at the smallest, now generally speaking, it's always best to write it in the format that they've written it originally. So 7/10 is the smallest, the next smallest is 0.705, and the biggest is 72%. Now, though it's worth 2 marks, you'll probably lose a mark if 1 is in the wrong place. Moving on to question 9, it says the x values in the table make a linear sequence and the y values in the table make a different linear sequence. Complete the table. Now, a linear sequence is basically a sequence of numbers where the difference between each number is the same. So the difference between the x values, you can see it's going up in +2. So 8 plus 2 is going to be 10, and then the y values, again, you can see the difference between 3 and 4 going up in +4. So 11 plus 4 is 15. So there my 2 numbers fitted in. For 9b, it says draw a straight line passing through the point 0, 3, 2, 7 and 4, 11. So if I just zoom out so we can see the scale and the coordinates. So 0, 3. So again, we're going along the corridor, and so we've got 0, 3, 2, 7, which is there, and 4, 11, which is there. And it should make a straight line, which it does. And then with a ruler, what you then want to do is draw a line connecting through each of those points. Now, again, you want to make sure that you are going through each of the points and that you are drawing a line, because the question does specify for you to draw a line. Now, when drawing a line on a graph, I always recommend and tell students to always go right to the edge of your graph paper on the exam paper. So don't just go up to 411, just go all the way across. Obviously, you don't need to go beyond the grid onto outside the paper. Then moving on to question 9c, it says use the graph to work out the value of y when x equals 3. So what we need to then do is from x equals 3, which is here, if we draw a line, which should be straight, and then you can see that it matches up at 9. So then the answer we need to write then is 9. Now, in the exam paper, depending on your accuracy of your line, they would accept, let's say, 8.9 or 9.1, but again, just half a square deviant from that. Moving on to question 10, it says when 5 is added to a negative number, the answer can be positive. Give one example to show that this is correct. Well, if you pick a negative number that is, let's say, from -4 to -1, so let's go for -3, and we add 5 to that, then here we can have an example where the answer is going to be 2, which is positive. And we just need to give one example. So this number here, I would say, just needs to be between -5 and 0. So then moving on to the next one, 10b, it says when 5 is added to a negative number, the answer can be negative. So here, if we go for a number, let's say, of -20, and we add 5, then that's going to give me an answer of -15, which is negative. So again, can't do anything about this number. This +5 is fixed. But in terms of this number just needs to be a number that is less than -5. And again, you can choose whichever number to get the 1 mark. For 10c, it says when a number is doubled, the answer is always greater than the original. Give one example when this is not correct. Well, again, if you just pick any negative number, and then multiply that by 2. So for example, e.g. if I go for -10 times 2, then that's going to give me -20, which is smaller than -10. So again, any of those, but again, you want to give an example rather than writing down a statement. Moving on to question 11, it says 480 people were asked if they eat sushi. 20% said yes. 2/3 of the people who said yes eat sushi at least once a month. And we want to complete the frequency tree. So for this, let's just zoom out because they've given us quite a lot of space for working out. So what we want to do is we want to work out what 20% of 480 is. Now 10% is going to be 48. So therefore 20% is going to be 96. Alternatively, you could have just done 0.2 times 480 on the calculator, in which you would have got 96. So 96 say yes. So then to work out no, all I need to do for this one is just do 480 minus 96, and that gives me an answer of 384. Then with the next bit of information, it tells us that 2/3 of the people who said yes eat sushi once a month. So for this box here, what we want to work out is 2/3 of 96. And again, to do this, we can either just type in 2/3 times 96 on the calculator, or you can do 96 divided by 3 multiplied by 2, and it gives us an answer of 64. So this is going to be 64. And to work out no, I just need to do 96 take away 64, which gives me an answer of 32. Moving on to question 12. Let's just zoom in a little bit so we can see it clearly on the screen. It says event A has taken place every 4 years, event B taken place every 3 years. Both events took place in 2019. Work out the last year before 2019 that both events took place. So if I start with event A and we've got event B, well, both of them took place at 2019. Now A takes place every 4 years, so the next one, or the previous one, will be at 2015, then 2011, then 2007, then 2004, then 2000. And let's see if I need to then continue from this. 2019 was every 3 years, so then it's going to be 2016, 2013, 2010, 2007, and as you can see there, I've got a pair. So the previous year that both events took place were in 2007. Question 13 says Luke wants to make a number machine so that y equals 5x plus 3. Here is his attempt. What mistake did he make? Well, the mistake that he made is that he got these two boxes the wrong way round. So he needed to multiply by 5 first, and then add 3. So in other words, he's got the two boxes in the wrong order. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 14, it says circle the solid that has 6 edges. Now, edges is basically the number of straight lines, so the correct answer is going to be a cube. Now, triangle-based pyramid only has 6. Well, no, that is correct, so that one is the one that we want. Then moving on to question 14, it says circle the solid that has 6 straight edges. So again, edges are straight lines, so that kind of discounts spheres and the cylinder. Now a cube has, so counting the number of straight lines, that's 4, 8, and then if we add the others, we've got a total of 12. And a triangle-based pyramid has 6, so that there is our correct answer. For 15a, it says on the grid shape A is drawn, one side of the shape B is also shown, complete shape B so that it's congruent to shape A. Now there's different variations of which you could have for this. So you could have, and again making sure that you're using a ruler, so that will be one variation. Another variation could be this. And I think they're the only two. We could also have it on the other side. So let's go for a different colour. So we could have that there. And we could also have that there. So again, different variations. As long as you've done that correctly, you should be absolutely fine. Moving on to question 15b, it says on this grid shape C is drawn. One side of shape D is also shown. And it says complete shape D, so that is an enlargement of shape C with a scale factor of 2. So we need to double the edges. So we've got the vertexes. So from this, we've got a side of 3. And to get from this point to this point, I need to go across 1, down 2. So doubling that, I need to go across 2 and down 4. So the new point there is going to be there. So then all that's left for me to then do is use a ruler to join those points up. And that's that one there. And then for the second one, and again, you will lose marks if you're not accurate. And so there we go. Moving on to question 16, it says 40 students were asked the number of visits they made to a gym 1 week. The chart shows information about the results. And the first question is asking, write down the modal number of visits. So here we're looking for which is the most popular number of visits. And as you can see, 1 has the biggest, the largest, the tallest bar, I should say. So there is our answer. Then for 16b, it says work out the mean number of visits, give your answer as a decimal. So for this, I need to go back to the table or to the chart. And what I'm going to do here is I need to draw a frequency table. So here I've got the number of visits, so I'm just going to call X, in which the 6 options are these numbers here. So I've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The next thing is the frequency. And here I'm just going to do the heights of each bar. So I've got 7, 10, 8, 7, and 5, and 3. And then for this, what I then need to do is to create an fx column. Now the fx values are basically the first number multiplied the number in the second column. So here we've got 0 times 7, which is 0. Then we've got 10, 16, 21, 20, and 15. The next, all I need to then do is simply total up these 2 columns. So totaling all of those columns up, I get 7 plus 10 plus 8 plus 7 plus 5 plus 3, which is 40, which is correct because it tells us that in the introduction of the question. And then the total fx, which is 0 plus 10 plus 16 plus 21 plus 20 plus 15, which gives us an answer of 82. So the mean is going to be the total fx, which is 82, divided by 40. And if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 2.05. Now moving on to question 16c, it says one of the 40 students is chosen at random. Work out the probability that the student visited the gym at least once. So if we go back to our table, and then what we then want to do is just total up the ones that went at least once. So that's going to be 10 plus 8 plus 7 plus 5 plus 3. So adding all those numbers, we get 33. So then the probability is going to be 33 over 40. Question 17, it says, this scale drawing of a bus has a length of 8. The actual length of the bus is 3.8 times the actual length of a car. Work out the actual length of a car. Give your answer in meters to the nearest centimetre. So first things first, what we need to do is work out the actual length of the bus. Now to do that, what we're going to do is use the scale. So we know that 1 centimetre equals 1.65 metres, and the scale is 8 centimetres. So it's going to be 8 times 1.65. And if I type that into the calculator, I get an answer of 13.2 metres. And then it then says the actual length is 3.8 times the actual length of the car. So the length of the car is going to be 13.2 divided by 3.8. And again, calculation for the calculator. And that gives me an answer of, and it's a long decimal number, so we wanted to give it to 2 decimal places because it says it's the nearest centimetre. So it's going to be 3.47, if I just write down the number that you should get, and that equals 3.47 metres. And there we go. Let's just write it there. Moving on to question 18, it says 11 identical full tins of red paint hold a total of 3,630 millilitres. All the paint from 4 of these tins is poured into an empty bucket. The bucket can hold 2,500 millilitres. Tins of white paint each hold 140 millilitres. can all the white paint from 9 tins be added to the bucket? And you must show your working. So for this, let's first of all work out what 4 tins of red paint are going to be. So here, let's have a look at what we've got. So 1 tin of red paint. Well, to work that out, what I need to do is I need to use this bit of information here. So what I've then got is I've got 3630 divided by 11, which equals, I'll just type that into my calculator, gives us an answer of 330. Same size as a can of Coke. Right then, so other drinks are available. So then from this, what we can then do is we then need to work out what 4 tins of red paint is going to be. So 4 tins is going to equal 4 times 330, which again on the calculator gives me an answer of 1320 milliliters. Now this is the amount that's poured into the bucket. So from this, what we then need to do is, well, if that's been poured into the bucket and the bucket can hold 2,500, so in the bucket we've got 2500 minus 1320, and that equals 1180 left. So the question's then asking, can 9 white paint tins be added? Now the tins of the white and the tins of the white is 140. So then what we then need to do is do 1180 divided by 140. Now if this answer is bigger than 9, then the answer is going to be yes. If the answer is less than 9, it's going to be no. So we've got 1180 divided by 140, and the answer it gives us is 8.42, and then a few numbers added. So then the answer is going to be no. Moving on to question 19, it says that the largest possible value of n is 2. Circle the correct inequality. Well, if the biggest value is 2, then n's got to be smaller or equal to 2, which is our first option. Moving on to question 20, it says Jamil is on holiday in France. The cost of a room in the hostel is €27. Convert to pounds using the ratio of £1 equals 1.2 euros. So for this we need to divide by 1.2. Because the pound is going to be a smaller digit, we're going to be dividing. So that's how usually you can tell whether you're multiplying or dividing. So 27 divided by 1.2 gives me an answer of £22.50. Now just remember, on the calculator it gives us 22.5, but when dealing with money you always want to round it up to 2 decimal places. So if there is no second digit, just add a 0. The next question then says Jamil rides a motorbike. The motorbike uses 1 litre of petrol for every 14 miles. How many litres of petrol does the motorbike use to go 168 kilometres? Use 8 kilometres equals 5 miles. So from this, what we then need to do is to convert 168 kilometres into miles. Now to do that, what we need to do is we need to divide by 8 and multiply by 5. So if we do 168 divided by 8, so 168 divided by 8 gives me an answer of 21. And then if we multiply that by 5, we get an answer of 105 miles. So next, what we then want to do is we need to divide that by 4 to work out how many litres it's going to need. So here we do 105 divided by 14, which gives us an answer of 7.5. So 7.5 or 7.5 litres is how much he's going to need. Moving on to question 21, it says the scatter graph shows the height and mass of some dogs. The scatter graph shows positive correlation. Describe the relationship between the height and the mass. Well, if it's got positive correlation, that basically means that as the height of the dog increases, so does its weight. So something along the lines of the taller the dog, the heavier it weighs. will be absolutely fine as a statement of relationship. The next question then says use the line of best fit to estimate the mass of a dog with a height of 48. So what we need to do here is to draw a line of best fit that generally goes through majority of the points. Now again, this is going to be kind of open to interpretation, and like I said, your line of best fit kind of wants to hug all of those points. So I'm going to say that's actually not too bad. So once you've drawn your line of best fit, what you then need to do is to find 48 on the height on the horizontal axes. So 48 is there. So it's 2 boxes off there. And then what you then want to do is you do want to draw these lines as accurately as you can. And looking at mine, I would say that's roughly going to be around 21. And it's really important that you do state whatever your line of best fit shows, with your lines going up from 48, then going across to find out what total is. But like I said, mine's going to be 21. And yes, so there's not going to be a particular range in which your values need to be, but as long as you've done it correctly, you should be absolutely fine. So I would roughly say any answer, looking at mine, would be between 19 and maybe 22 would be sufficient as a correct answer. Moving on to question 22, it says ABCDE is a pentagon, and the question is asking us to work out the area of the pentagon. Now from this you can see that we've got a trapezium, which I'm just going to label as A, and we've got a triangle, which I'm just going to call B. So here A is a trapezium and B is a triangle. Now the formulas for the area of each of these shapes, well, this is going to be A plus B times H divided by 2, and the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. So working out the area of A is 20, or 14 I should say. Again, it doesn't really make a difference because you're going to be adding the numbers anyway. So we've got 14 plus 20, which is these two lengths here. So that's A, that's B, and that's H. And multiplied by 11, and we're going to then divide that by 2. So if I just type that all into my calculator, 14 plus 20 times 11 divided by 2 gives me an answer of 187. I then need to work out the base and the height of the triangle, which is 10 and 7. So the area for B is going to be 10 times 7 divided by 2, which is 35. So then the total area is just basically adding those numbers up. So I've got 187 plus 35, which gives me an answer of 222 centimetres square. And again, don't need to worry about the units because it's already written there. Moving on to question 23, it says Joe, Kim and Lisa each have the amount of money. Joe has £72. Joe's amount to Kim's amount is in the ratio of 6:5. Lisa's amount is 1.5 times Joe's amount. Show that in total they have less than £250. So for this, what we need to do is we need to first of all establish how much each of these three people have. So it tells us that Joe has £72. So then what I need to do is work out Kim's. So to work out Kim's, I need to use this ratio. So we know that from this ratio that this amount that Joe's got is 6 parts. So if 6 parts is £72, then 1 part is going to be 72 divided by 6, which is 12. And therefore 5 parts, which is Kim's amount, is going to be 5 times 12, which is £60. So therefore Kim has £60. Then what I need to then do is then work out what Lisa's amount is, and it says that Lisa has 1.5 times Joe's amount. So for Lisa, it's going to be 1.5 multiplied by Joe's amount, which is 72, and 1.5 times 72 is £108. So Lisa is going to have £108. So then the grand total of this is going to be 72 plus 60 plus 108, and if I add all that up, I get a total of 240. and 240 is less than 250. And so there we have proved what they wanted us to show. Moving on to question 24, it says that a solid state statue has a volume of 512 centimeter cubes. The statue has a mass of 3.6 kilograms. The density of iron is 7.87 grams per cubic centimeter. Is the statue made of iron? So what we need to do is use the formula for density. Now density is equal to, now if you're not sure about the formula, always look at the unit. So grams, which is out of the two, is mass. Per means divide, and cubic centimeters is a unit of volume. So that's one way of remembering the formula. So then what I then need to do is use these values and substitute it into the formula. So the density of the statue is going to be the mass, which is 3.6, and I then need to convert that, so that's in kilograms. So converting that into grams is going to be 3,600 grams. And then the units, which are absolutely fine for the volume, so that's going to be divided by 512 centimeter cubed. So this is going to be divided by 512 cubed. So this is what I then need to tap into my calculator. So 3,600 divided by 512, and that gives me an answer of 7.03125. Now as you can see, that number that I've got is different to this amount here. So the answer to the question, is the statue made of iron? No, it is not. And again, if you want to write numbers as a reason, you could write 7.03125 is not equal to 7.87. It's not even close. So I would suggest if it was 7.8, you could say, there's a chance it could be made of iron if the numbers were very similar. But as you can see, there is a massive difference between 7.03 and 7.87. Moving on to question 25, it says, here is a rule for a sequence. After the first two terms, each term is the sum of the previous two terms. So in other words, this is looking at Fibonacci sequence. So the first term is 33, the second term is x, the fourth term is 73. Work out the value of x. So let's have a look at, if we just have some spaces. Now the first number is 33, second number is x, and the fourth number is 73. Now to work this rule out, to work out what this number here is going to be, I need to add these two together. So this is going to be 33 plus x. Then what I can then do is, using this plus this, the second term plus the third term, equals 73. So therefore what I've got is x plus 33 plus x equals 73. Now hopefully what you could see is that this forms a linear sequence. So here I've got 2x plus 33 equals 73. So taking away the 33, I get 2x equals 40. So x equals 20. And lo and behold, there I've got my final answer. Then moving on to question 25b, it says an expression for the nth term of a different sequence is n minus n squared. Ruth says all the terms will be negative because n squared is always greater than n. Is she correct? When you tick a box. Now for this, let's have a look at what this is. Now remember, n is the position of a term. So let's try with when n is 1. Then we're going to end up with 1 minus 1 squared, which is 0. Then when n is 2, we get 2 minus 2 squared, which is minus 2. When n is 3, we get 3 minus 3 squared, in which we get minus 6. When n is 4, we get 4 minus 4 squared, which is minus 10. And so forth. So Ruth's claim is that all the terms will be negative because n squared is always greater than n. That's not always true because 0 is not negative. So therefore the correct answer is no, and give you a reason for your answer, because 1 minus 1 squared is 0. So after the first term, all values will be negative. So she's kind of true, but she's forgot the first term. Moving on to question 26, it says P and Q are points. The x ordinate of Q is 4 more than the x coordinate of P, and the y ordinate of Q is 5 less the coordinate of P. Work out the gradient of the straight line through P and Q. So let's have a look at this then. So if we just say, for example, well, we don't know the coordinates of P. So if we just say that the coordinates of P is x and y. Now, you could use algebra or you could use numbers, and I'll give you an example of this. So if we just make up two nice numbers, so let's go for, so e.g., if we just assume that P is 3, 5, let's say. Then to work out the coordinates of Q, now using this bit of information, so the x ordinate of Q is 4 more than P. Well, if the coordinate of P is x, then the x ordinate of Q is going to be x plus 4. So in other words, if we look at the actual number term, then Q is going to have a point of 3 plus 4, which is 7. Then it says that the y ordinate is 5 less. So it's going to be y minus 5. So these are the algebraic ways of writing the two coordinates. But if you're going to pick two numbers, so then from this to this, I need to add 4. To get from this to this number, I need to take away 5. So that's going to be 0. So next, what's left for me to then do is to work out the coordinates of this. Now, again, I personally would say on the foundation that it's probably better off using numbers rather than the algebra. It's going to seem a lot easier. So if I just kind of fictitiously draw a set of axes. Now, there is a formula to work out the gradient. It's basically the difference in x over the difference in y over the difference in x. So let me just write that down. So the gradient equals the difference in y over the difference in x. So, but if you want to draw it out, that's absolutely fine. So this point here, which is P, is at 3, 5, and Q, which is here, and that's going to be at 7 and 0. So then what's the question is asking me to do is to work out the gradient of this triangle. So the difference of this triangle is 5 and the base of that triangle is 4. So therefore the difference in y is 5 and the difference in x is 4. And it's got a negative gradient, so it's going to be a minus. So the answer then is going to be minus 5 over 4, or you can write it as minus 1.25. In 27, it says m equals PR. P is halved and R is multiplied by 3. What happens to m? So let's have a look at this then. So here what we've then got is we've got m and we've got P over 2, and we're multiplying that by 3 lots of R. Now if I combine this, so if I convert this into a fraction, then what we get is we get 3PR divided by 2, and 3 over 2 is 1.5, so here we're doing 3 over 2 times PR, so we're multiplying by 3 over 2, so the correct answer then is the third option. Now moving on to question 20, it says here are the results after 250 spins of a coin. The coin is spun an extra 50 times. After all 300 spins, the relative frequency of a head is 0.49. For the extra 50 spins, work out the number of heads to the number of tails. So the first thing we need to do is to work out the, don't know why I'm writing F, let's just get rid of that. So for the, oh that's right, for the 300 spins, the number of heads is going to be the relative frequency, which is 0.49 multiplied by 300. And 0.49 times 300 gives us an answer of 147. So that's how many heads there were. From this, I can then work out the number of tails, which is going to be 300 minus 147, which is 153. So then what I can then do is work out the difference. So for the 50 spins, what I want to do is take away this number from the numbers that are in the table. So it's going to be for heads, it's going to be 147 minus 128, which is 19. and for the tails I then take away this number from this number, so that's going to be 153 minus 122, which gives us 31. And then all that's left for me to do is then convert it into the ratio as requested. So heads to tails is going to be 19 to 31. So moving on to question 29, it says circle the equation where C is inversely proportional to D. So writing this out, we get C is inversely proportional to D, and then writing it with an equal sign, we replace the proportional symbol with K over D. Now this is something that I'm looking for. I'm sort of looking for something where C equals, and C is the subject, which is in all of the four options, but I'm looking for where single D is the denominator. And the only equation where single D is the denominator is our second option. Now it's definitely not going to be this one, because that another way of writing that is D over 2. And so that's why number 1 is not the correct answer. Moving on to question 30, it's as part of a running track is an arc of a semicircle joined by a straight line. The semicircle has a diameter of 45 meters. The straight line has a length of 75 meters. Abby runs along this part of the track in 18 seconds. Work out the average speed. Give your answer to 2 sig fig. Now what you want to do here is first of all check what units we're going to be working with. So as you can see, the units that we need are meters and seconds. So we need the distance in meters and the time in seconds. So for this, what we need to do is work out the 2 bits of the track. So looking at the first bit, which I'm just going to highlight in orange. Now this is half a circle. Now the perimeter of a circle is pi times d, but this is a semicircle, so we need to divide by 2. Now it tells us that the diameter of the circle is 45. So then to work out this part, what I need to do is do pi times 45 divided by 2, and if I type that all into my calculator, I get an answer of 70.68583471. Now again, if you want to round that number up, that's fine, but certainly don't use 70. The next thing for me to then do is to work out, add that to 75. So if I've still got it on my calculator, I just add that number to 75. So the total distance, not rounding, is going to be 145.68583447. Now from this we can then round, I could round it up. Now the total time is 18 seconds. So the speed is going to be these two numbers divided by each other. So it's 145.68583447. Again, if you want to give a rounded number, that's fine, but don't round it too much. I'm going to go for exact because it's still on my calculator. Divide that by 18 and I get an answer of 8.093657484. And that's meters per second. Now the question does say give your answer 2 sig fig. So rounding this answer up to 2 sig fig gives me an answer of 8.1 meter per second. Then moving on to our last question, it says here is some information about the members of clubs in A and B. It says work out the total height of the members of club A over the total height of members in club B. Give your answer as a decimal. So here the total height is going to be multiplying these numbers together. So here we've got 24 times 1.8, or should I say multiply, and that gives us 43.2. And then do the same for the second one, 20 times 1.92, and that gives us an answer of 38.4. And so what we then need to do is just divide the totals. So it's going to be 43.2 divided by 38.4, and typing that in, and we get an answer of 9 over 8, which is 1.125. So the correct answer there is 1.125, and that concludes the end of this paper. Now what I'll do in description, I'll also include the grade boundaries for this individual paper, but if you've done all 3 papers and you add up all your scores, I'll also write down what the overall grade boundaries are for the series of 3 on this Foundation November 2022 paper.